Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started. My name is Lawson Owen with Proactive Dealer Solutions. Just to real quickly give you a little backstory as to who we are and what we do. We work with automotive dealerships. We help them implement business development centers, whether it be for sales or for service. We actually get outside of automotive and other verticals and pretty much do the same thing. At the end of the day, business development is a mandate if you're a business owner, right? Our job is to grow our business, to expand our business, and that's really what a business development initiative and a business development culture can help you do. The title here is how BDC can help find vanishing ROI, and that's really what we're going to be talking about here over the next 12 or 15 slides is what's the reality of the marketplace? What's the reality of most dealerships? Where is growth going to be found, right? And what we say is growth is found in the opportunities currently being mismanaged. And of the 1,100 clients that we currently work with, all of them have had a problem with lead management, right? So just as a show of hands, because we've only got a few people in here, how many of y'all have a BDC now? Anybody? Okay, so we got a couple. How many are thinking about it? This gentleman wanted more information. How many of y'all are thinking about implementing a business development center? Okay, so pretty much everybody. So what I want to encourage you to do is we've got 45 minutes, ask questions. If you've got a question, throw your hand up and just ask it. Don't wait for the end because if you're like me, you're probably going to forget what the question was, right? So I want this to be as interactive as we can make it. Hopefully I'll give you enough information to maybe have you think about things a little bit differently, right, as relates to business development. But certainly what I want you to do is to leave here knowing more and maybe having a better action plan than maybe what you had when you came in, okay? So I'd like to encourage you to do that. Like I said, we specialize in automotive. We work with about 1,100 dealerships across North America. A bunch of those, the majority of those are franchise. We do have a lot of independents. We work with Camping World. Anybody heard of Camping World, right? 148 locations. They just partnered with us. We've worked with Bass Pro Shops, their Tracker Marine division, right? So any retail environment needs effective communication. Is that a fair statement? Our job is to move and motivate our customers, right, our customer base to participate in the process. So when you think about business development, really what you want to do is you want to think about three different things. Number one is customer experience. How do we make it easier for the consumer to do business with us? Okay, so the customer experience is critical. The second objective of a business development initiative is improved lead awareness, right? Most organizations have more opportunities available to them than what they realize. So improved lead awareness. And then the third aspect is going to be improved lead management. So we all want to sell more cars. We all want to service more cars. The question becomes is where is that growth going to come from? It's really going to come from two different areas. Doing a better job on the reactionary leads, meaning close more phone ups, closing more floor traffic, closing more internet leads. You're going to get incremental sales, right, from that. But then the real growth is going to come from the long-term follow-up and follow-through of your customers, leveraging your database. Right? Most organizations spend money in advertising to create traffic, but they don't spend as much time, effort, and energy in leveraging the customers that they already have within their CRM. Does everybody have a CRM? Just show of hands. Everybody got a CRM? Okay, good. How many of you feel like you do a good job utilizing your CRM? I'm surprised to see that because normally this gentleman was shaking his head. That's what I see out there. Most organizations use like this much of the functionality, right, of their CRM. It's not set up properly. It's not configured properly. Our salespeople don't do a good job logging the information in the system. The quality of the data is lacking, right? That's what I tend to see out there in the marketplace. And that's one of the things you're going to want to guard against as you start to move through your growth initiative. So first thing we want to talk about is I think BDC is the most overused acronym out there in the car business. It means something different to everybody. And so what we need to do is to kind of come to an agreement as to what does business development centers or what does a business development initiative really mean. And for us, it's an effective application of strategies and practices that identify opportunities. That's the whole point of the exercise, right? It identifies opportunities and it enhances management's awareness and increases lead conversion for sales or for service. The whole point of the exercise is I become more aware of how many floor ups, phone ups, and internet leads I have, and I manage them more effectively and I close more of them. That's the whole point of the exercise. Okay? But you're only going to, you can't sell everybody. If we could sell just 15% of our phone ups, 15% of our internet leads, in most cases, that's going to be doing a really good job. But that means that 85% didn't buy a car, right? So that's the long-term follow-up and follow-through that we want to look at. Most organizations, if you could just sell 3 or 4, maybe even 5% of your 90-day rolling average of unsold traffic, that could be another 10, 15, 20 cars, depending upon the size of your store. But we have to capture them, we have to log them, we have to make sure that they're in the CRM. So again, it's an application of strategies and best practices. At the end of the day, BDC equates to process execution. You either don't have a fundamental process in place or your people just aren't following it, right? And that's normally the case. The daily discipline of implementation and execution of some best practices, that's where we kind of fall down. You've got 3 salespeople, 13 salespeople, 30 salespeople, it doesn't matter. It seems like everybody's doing their own thing, right? Whereas I need to have one process in place that everybody follows and everybody adheres to. So this is how we define business development, right? And what are some of the objectives? Fix the phones. We're starting to see that there's an increase in inbound sales calls, okay? The consumer, everybody's got one of these. Is that a fair statement? Everybody's searching online through their phone. The customer is impatient. You're impatient. We want answers now. Is that a fair statement? Click to call. So we're starting to see that there's an increase in an increase in inbound sales calls, right? But the challenge is, in most organizations, there's what's called a call failure rate, right? Calls fail. What does fail mean? Calls are either lost, dropped, or abandoned. I call in, you put me on hold, I'm on hold for 4 minutes, and then I bail. What would you do? I get transferred to a voicemail. I don't want to go to voicemail. I bail. I get transferred to voicemail and the voicemail's full. I bail. IVR, right? Automated attendant. Anybody have an automated attendant? Push 1 for sales, 2 for service, whatever it might be. Consumers hate that. When you call in and there's an automated attendant, what button do you push? 0? That's what I do. So the consumer hates those things. So there's a thing out there called call failure rate. This 13%, we've got, like I said, 1,100 clients that go through our telephony product. We're starting to see dealers that have an 18, 20% call failure rate. 1 out of 5 inbound calls into the dealership aren't being answered, or they're lost, dropped, or abandoned. So the first thing that we have to do, right, because a ringing phone, is that an opportunity to do business when that phone's ringing? Yeah. So we got to be aware of, 1, how many we're getting, but 2, how many aren't connecting, because that's a huge problem. Right? We want to master the phone. If we just have a positive, friendly, helpful person answer the phone and invite somebody into the dealership, you have a 58% increased probability of scheduling an appointment. Just by having somebody invite them into a store. I was just talking to Justin. Do you all know Justin Osborne? Right? He did a mystery shop of, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I think he did mystery shops of 15 different dealerships, right? Of those 15 different dealerships, 12 never asked him for an appointment to come into the dealership. Isn't that crazy? But what's your store doing? If we don't know, we need to figure that part out. Is the consumer transaction ready? Are they ready to do business? What do you think? I think they are, because they're calling in and saying, I'm on your website, I'm looking at stock number 4122A. Is it still there? What's your best price? Isn't that what they're saying? If that's not a hand raiser, brother, I don't know what is. They're ready to do business. They've already looked at the car. They've already looked at the pictures, right? So how well are we handling those inbound calls? So when you think about a business development center, our job is to convert more leads, right? Turn mishandled opportunities into an opportunity for growth. The reality is that most salespeople the average salesperson do a good job following up with customers. Most follow-up in the car business is a complete waste of time because it's one and done. They call the customer back and the customer says, I'm thinking about it, drinking about it, praying about it, talking to my mother, brother, God. And the salesperson says, okay, whenever you're ready, give me a call. Now it's the customer's responsibility, right? Isn't that what happens? Right? So most follow-up isn't effective and it's not consistent. We know that it takes 3 to 5 customer interactions before the consumer starts to participate in the process again. 3 to 5 customer interactions. So that means I've got to call one person maybe as many as 5 times Do you think the average salesperson is going to do that? That's why a business development center is so important. You've got to decide what's the right model for you. You've got the traditional model of trying to get it done with salespeople and sales managers, or you can go with a specialized model, right? That specialized model is somebody whose role, whose function in life is to make and take phone calls. That's all they do. Most salespeople don't like the phone. That's why they don't go near it. So a BDC, a business development center, might just be one person. It could be 5 people. It could be 55 people. Average BDC that we see out there in the marketplace is 3 or 4 people. The size of the BDC, meaning the number of people that you have, is really going to be driven by the lead volume that you have that you want this person or this department to handle. We know that the average BDR, business development rep, can handle 200 to 250 fresh leads a month. 250 fresh leads a month. And then we feel you should have a 90 to 120 day follow-up process. Literally day 1, day 3, day 5, day 9, whatever the touch points are that are pushed or leveraged through your CRM, but you want to have a 90 to 120 day follow-up process. So that's why that person can't handle, more than 200, 250 leads, because after 3 months, they've got 750 or thereabouts in their personal portfolio, if you will. And then you want them to make a volume of outbound calls every single day. Okay? So the hard truths, right? The reality versus what we expect. 13% increase in inbound sales calls. As of last month, that number is actually 17% across the 1,100 stores that we're working with. So the phone's ringing more often. The average customer calls 2.8 dealerships. Let's call it 3. Right? They're spending hours online researching the vehicle, and then they're calling around. That's why the customer experience is so important. If I make you feel good about calling my dealership, if I answer the phone, I invite you in with a positive, friendly, helpful person, you're going to increase the probability that you sell this person a car. So they're shopping around. 25 to 30% of inbound sales calls are lost or not logged in their CRM. I see this happen all the time. 25 to 30% of the times when a customer calls in inquiring about a car, that opportunity isn't logged in your CRM. So we're missing out on those opportunities. We spend advertising dollars to create an opportunity, our cost per lead, our cost per sale, and we're not even logging those people in our system. So we're not only not getting the right return on investment from our advertising dollars, we're not getting the right return on investment from the expense of our CRM, simply because we have a faulty process, right? Average dealership closes 5 to 7% of their inbound sales calls. 5 to 7%. Average dealership closes 6 to 8% of their internet leads. Right? It's kind of scary if you think about it. If the consumer's transaction ready, why are we not closing the deals? Right? Is it a fundamental breakdown in process? Do we not have the right skill set? I say it all the time. We got to keep it simple. I'm just a car guy, 27 years in the car business. It's either I'm not talking to enough people or I'm not saying the right things. What else could it be? Right? That's it. But we don't even know how many opportunities we're getting because we're not logging them in the system. How many of you have tried to pull a report out of your CRM, then you ask questions, and the first thing somebody says is, well, that's not accurate. Anybody had that conversation? We have this technology, but we don't leverage it correctly. So 5 to 7% off a phone and 6 to 8% off of internet leads. Where are you at? Where are you at? Not knowing's not okay. Is that a fair statement? Sales is a numbers game. Everybody heard that? Sales is a numbers game. You got to know your number if you want to win the game. And most organizations don't. Average buyer visits 1.2 dealerships. So again, they're transaction ready. They're spending all of their time online, researching the vehicle, and then they're calling 2 or 3 different dealerships and they're making a decision. It's just, are they deciding to do business with you? Floor traffic, right? Most organizations don't get a lot of floor traffic anymore. Is that a fair statement? Right? The up buses change locations. But even with the limited number of floor ups that we get, most stores don't log them into their CRM. They lose 30 to 40% of their floor ups because it's never logged in the system. So when you think about a business development initiative or a business development center, the whole idea is to have people on your staff that are going to make a massive volume of outreach to your customers. Well, if we're not logging them in the system, then they don't have anybody to call. And that department is going to struggle. So, what do we need to do? We have a term, we call it total opportunity management. Total opportunity management. It's the process by which we increase the structure, the control, and the accountability of every lead, every opportunity that's coming into the dealership. We should be able to identify, right, to a number, how many phone ups we're getting. Tracking numbers. Anybody use tracking numbers? Right? Everybody should. For the $300, $400, $500 a month, you should get some tracking lines. A lot of times you hear, well, I'm too small. I don't think you're ever too small to manage your opportunities. I see sales opportunities and service opportunities as an asset, right? Asset management. I'm spending money in some way to make that consumer reach out to me. It might just be my frontage. It might be the signage for my building. It might be my frontline display. It could be the $10,000 or $20,000 a month I'm spending in advertising. I don't know. But there's an expense there, and we should have a process in place that we manage those opportunities to a greater extent. So I should know to a number exactly how many opportunities I'm getting from the phone, from the internet, from floor ups. I should know to a person who handled that opportunity. And then management, somebody as a sales manager should know what the outcome of that customer interaction is. Meaning, if I know that John is handling an inbound sales call, I as a manager should understand the outcome of that phone conversation. Is that fair to expect from your people? We say all the time, if I can get my sales managers to manage internet leads and to manage phone ups the way they manage a floor up, would we sell more cars from internet leads and phone ups? We all know the answer. It would be yes. We've conditioned our managers to only manage the person that's belly to belly. But that's not where the market is anymore. That's not where the consumers are. They're searching online and they're phoning in. That's why managers need to be aware of it. So we have to have a process that allows us to increase that level of accountability. Accountability in the car business is like a four-letter word. Nobody likes to hear it, right? Everybody starts to push back on it. Accountability for us is nothing more than awareness. I want to increase my manager's awareness as to how much traffic I'm getting in real time. And I want my managers to manage it in real time. Do you expect your salespeople to touch desk? Tell you where they're at with the floor up? Do you expect your people to do that? What's that? They don't always do that, but that's the expectation, right? You expect a manager or a salesperson to touch desk. You expect a sales manager to manage that opportunity in real time. That's what we need to apply to every other lead source that we have. So we have to make sure that we've got a process, because BDC is all about process execution. It's either you don't have a process or nobody's following it. And in most cases, we have a process. It's just that we let our people skip steps or not follow it. And then it's detrimental to the business. So we have to establish a departmental process for inbound sales calls, right? How many of you all have a script? Your people have a script that they utilize for handling inbound calls? 2, 3. Why is a script so important, do you think? Why is a script important? Process? Steps? Yeah. A script makes the conversation controllable and predictable. That's it. We have a road to the sale for a floor up, don't we? Meet and greet, qualify, land in stock, pull from stock, feature presentation, right? Show them the car, go for a ride, bring them in, right? You may sit them down, pull credit, whatever it is, but you have a process. It makes the situation controllable and predictable. We have to have the same process for an inbound sales call, so it makes the situation controllable and predictable, right? The desired outcome should be something we already know what's going to happen. It shouldn't be a mystery of whether this call is going to go well if we have a script. And that's why a business development center, again, is so important, is because you have somebody who's trained and in front of the phone and prepared to not sell the car over the phone, but to sell the appointment. And that's what we tend to see with a lot of salespeople who are handling calls. They try to sell the car over the phone, as opposed to just selling the appointment. Get them in, right? To sell more cars, or if you have a service drive, to service more vehicles, all you need is one thing: more traffic. But the question becomes, where is that traffic going to come from? And that's why we've got to get a handle on our phone ups, our floor ups, and our internet leads, right? The only lead that is accurate or can be quantified in the car business is internet inquiries. Because in most cases, those internet inquiries are deposited directly into the CRM. Does everybody have that going on with your CRM? So that's the only number that's accurate. Most phone ups and floor ups aren't accurate. So that tells me that the organization doesn't have a process. If you want to check if you've got a process problem, get all your people together. I call it clean sheet. I don't have a piece of paper. But you give them a blank piece of paper and ask your people to write down your road to the sale. What's your process for floor ups? Wouldn't you expect them all to have the same process for a floor up? Right? I'll bet you money that you won't. After that, take that piece of paper away from them. Give them another blank piece of paper. Ask them to write down the road to the sale, your process for phone ups. I've seen this happen at big stores. They get a blank piece of paper. There isn't one. So we wonder why little Johnny on the floor doesn't know what to do or performs erratically, right? He sells 6 cars one month, 18 cars the next month, 5 cars the next month, right? It's because maybe there isn't a process that this person is following. Our job as managers is to ensure that we have a process in place that can't be manipulated. So I would challenge you to go there and say, okay, what's our process for floor ups? What's our process for phone ups? What's our process for internet leads? What's our process for unsold traffic? Unsold phone or floor traffic? All traffic. Traffic is traffic is traffic. And as a manager, I should be managing all traffic consistently across the board. Outbound campaigns. I see it all the time. Organizations aren't really growing. They've been selling 40 cars a month for the past 2 or 3 years, or they've been selling 100 cars a month for the past 2 or 3 years. There's no real growth. What that tells me is that they're losing as many out the back doors as they're getting in the front door. Because if we had campaigns, which are nothing more than retention calls, if we had campaigns in place, we would be maintaining or retaining our customers and then growing it with the fresh leads or the fresh stuff that we're getting. Did that make any sense? Outbound calls and campaigns are critical to the growth of your dealership. And again, that's why capturing traffic, logging traffic, making sure it's getting put into the CRM, making sure that there's quality of data in the CRM so that when I do make those outbound calls, those retention calls, right, we're actually talking to people. Make sense? So, accountability. First thing we want to do is we want to make sure that every lead is being logged in the CRM, right? Seems basic, seems fundamental, but it's not. It doesn't happen, right? And what's the old saying? You can't manage what you can't measure. My job as a sales manager is twofold. Now, managers can do 101 different things throughout the day, but as a sales manager, I have 2 primary roles, 2 primary objectives. One is to manage salespeople. Is that fair? Second one is to manage sales opportunities. That's why I'm called a sales manager, right? So if I have a sales manager that isn't ensuring that every phone up is logged in the CRM, that every floor up is logged in the CRM, isn't making sure that the quality of the data is there, I could argue that my sales manager isn't doing their job. Because that's fundamental to a sales manager, to manage that traffic. So we've got to make sure that that's in place. We've got to know our numbers. Even if the numbers are bad, you need to know your number, right? In my analogy is a GPS. I was at the airport. I type in the address for the hotel. The first thing the GPS system has to do is to figure out where I'm at. And once it knows where I'm at, it can tell me how to get where I want to go. That's what we basically need to do. We need to benchmark our organization and figure out where we're at. Are you at 5% closing ratio off of phone ups? Are you at 8% closing ratio off of internet leads? Where are you at now? It doesn't matter if the number's ugly. You need to know where you're at. And then you need to have a 90-day growth plan to improve upon that number. Imagine if all you did was improve 1% in 4 areas. 1% improvement from phone ups, 1% improvement from internet leads, 1% improvement from unsold traffic, 1% improvement from my database. 4%, 1% in each of those categories. But I did 1% a month for the next 6 months. You'd be up 24%. How many of you would like to be up 24 or 25%? We all would. There's more than enough opportunities there for us to do that. Because if we can't improve 1%, we maybe need to go work at Lowe's or something. I don't know. But 1% improvement, is that fair, reasonable, and obtainable? I got to think it is, if we focus. That's what I love about the car business. Whatever we focus in on just naturally gets better. It's not that our people are lazy. It's not that they don't care. It's just that we don't have actionable information, actionable data. And that's really the objective of a business development initiative, is now you know. What are we going to do about it, right? So, what's next? Evaluate your current process, right? When was the last time you evaluated your current sales process? Whether it be for the phone, the floor, or for the internet. When was the last time you benchmarked, right? Your efficiencies. How well are we doing? Do you know what your floor up count is? Do you know what your demo count is? Do you know what your write-up count is? And what your closing ratio is? We used to shoot for a minimum 80% demo, 60% write-up, and we knew we'd close about half of what we presented numbers to, right? So are we tracking and measuring those things? So benchmark. Inbound sales calls. You should be able to run with a 95% name and number ratio. You can't sell everybody, but we should be able to follow up with everyone. 95% names and phone numbers from all fresh inbound sales calls. Minimum 65 to 70% appointment ratio. 7 out of 10 people should say, yes, I'll come in. And then we've all heard this, half show, half buy a car, right? We've all heard that. So if you want to sell more cars, you have to improve the quality of your traffic. How do you improve the quality of your traffic? You start to work off of appointed traffic. If I know who you are, what you want, when you're going to be here, and then you actually show up, is that a car deal? It's a car deal in the car business I grew up in. If I had more of those, we'd sell more cars. So why can't we do that, right? So those appointments are going to be critical. If you're going to go with a specialized model with a BDR, a business development rep, you should expect them to make 100 outbound phone calls per rep per day. 100 outbound phone calls. We know if the quality of the data in the CRM is good, doesn't even have to be great, it's just got to be good. If the quality of the data in the CRM is good, these people will run with a 30% contact ratio. So 100 attempts equates to 30 conversations. 30% contact ratio. If this person has a scripted platform, right, we should be able to have a 20 to 25% appointment ratio. So one person can generate 6 to 8 appointments a day if we manage them to that extent, if they've got the logged opportunities in the CRM. There's a lot of things that come into play. A lot of BDC struggle or fail, not because the concept isn't sound, it's just that all the peripherals aren't in place to support it. So the production capability isn't there. If you want to go with the traditional model of utilizing salespeople, right? We should have an activity or behavior performance expectation of our salespeople. Is that fair to say? Should salespeople pick up the phone? Should salespeople call back your customers or their customers? 15, 5, and 1. Keep it simple. 15 phone calls. Again, 30% contact ratio. If I can get all my salespeople every day to make 15 attempts, they're going to speak to 5 people. They should be able to generate 1 appointment. 15, 5, and 1. So the ideal situation is you have 1 or 2 dedicated, committed people to making a volume of outbound calls. That's your BDR. And then you couple that with a working sales team. So imagine if I have Miss Betty or Mr. Bob who's making 100 calls, speaking to 30 people, generating 6 to 8 appointments, and then my 3, 4, 5, or 6 salespeople are doing 15, 5, and 1. Will I start to have more appointed traffic show up at my dealership? Will I start to sell more cars? We already know the answer. It's yes. But without the right activities and the behaviors, you won't get the output. The biggest challenge we have is activity and behavior management. Getting our people to do the things we want them to do. That's our challenge, right? So, do you have the necessary tools in place? If you've got a CRM, great first step. Is it properly being utilized? Are the triggers, day 1, day 3, day 5, day 7, or whatever it is, are they set up appropriately and for a long enough period of time? Again, 90 to 120 day follow-up process, and then we should be touching customers 3, maybe 4 times a year after that. That's how these people are going to have a volume of activities or people to call, right? Establish objectives. Everybody should have a target or a goal that they're working towards every single day, right? That's why we come up with 100 calls, 30 conversations, 6 to 8 appointments, 15, 5 and 1 for salespeople. But you have to establish an objective that's right for your store, right? Right for your environment. You might think that 130 and 6 to 8 appointments, that's way too high. Okay, great. But let's start somewhere, right? Let's start somewhere. Process selection, process implementation. Again, do an assessment of your current processes. Do you have the right process, or do we just need to train people on it better than we have in the past? And then do I need to make sure my managers are disciplined enough to execute on that process every single day? Train. Not because we're a training company, because obviously we believe in training, but how are you expecting things to get better if your people aren't getting better? Right? Your people have to be getting better. And the only way to get better is by being trained. Right? So we don't train enough in the car business. It's been my experience. We always say that we're too busy. I get it. It's a very busy environment. It's a very busy day. But we need to make time. The old 7 habits of highly effective people, Stephen Covey, right? Sharpening the saw. We've got to find time to improve upon the skill set of our people. That includes your sales managers, your sales people, right? Everybody's skill set needs to improve. And then once we start to have a different level of awareness, a higher level of accountability, the last thing we have to do is start to make tweaks and adjustments. But you need to have the data to know where to make the tweaks and adjustments. I'm trying to shut my phone off here. So adjustments are everything. So when you think about management, the first thing is awareness. The second thing is an action plan. And then the third is to assess. So you can start to make the adjustments. Okay? So, I've done a lot of talking for about 30 minutes straight. Questions? Anything? Yes, sir. Yep. A 15% closing ratio off of inbound sales calls and internet leads. Now that's a good job. 15%. 12.5 to 15% is the target. We have a lot of stores that run 18, 20, 21%. So you can run higher than that, but 15 is a good benchmark, watermark to work towards. The first thing we've got to do, though, is figure out where are you at now. Are you like the average dealer that's closing 6 to 8 off of internet and 5 to 7 off a phone? Because 15, it's like landing on the moon. The first thing we got to do is to get to 8, get to 10, get to 12. And that might be a 90-day dance, right? So, but that's the first thing we have to do is to figure out where are we at. Promax, if I'm not mistaken, I think the company that they use, but your inbound sales calls are deposited directly into the system. So not all CRMs do that. So the question becomes is, are we managing those in real time? Are we updating that lead? Do we know who handled it, and are we updating the status of that lead so that I can figure out my closing ratio? Yep. Right. So the easiest way to do it, rule of thumb, and if you give me a card or an email, I can give you a whole staffing matrix, pay plans, job descriptions, whatever we can do to help you, right? Just need to, give me the information, or I'll give you my card and you can reach out to me. But rule of thumb, just add up all of your leads, fresh phone-ups, fresh internet leads, and fresh floor traffic, subtract out your sold, divide that by 250, that's going to give you a ballpark number of how many people you're going to need, right? So, and then, now, BDC is a specialized department. The more you can specialize within the department, the better off you're going to be. But most business development centers will have a team for service that just do service and a team for sales that just does sales. Some will have a team that just does outbound and some will do just inbound, but most stores don't have enough leads to do that. Everybody's got to be cross-trained. So it's normally you staff for the reactionary, and then you want to have time in their day for that volume of outbound calls.
Have you found that it's turning to a point where certain BDRs that handle certain customers better? We have a combination of a subprime store and a really great prime store with high-line calls.
Mm-hmm.
You suggest that so if you have certain lead sources, you go to certain people.
Yes, as long as we can benchmark. And the way I look at it is if we have the right data, selling more cars isn't that difficult, right? I give this gentleman 10 customers, he sells 7. I give the next gentleman 10 customers, he sells 7. I give this gentleman, 10 customers, he sells 1. I eliminate him from the equation. The next 10 customers go to these 2 guys. I'm going to sell more cars. So if I have the right data, I'll know who does a better job on fresh inbound calls. I'll know who does a better job on contacting internet leads or motivating the unsold traffic to come back in. And that's why the data is so critical. We need to know. But if you have the accurate data and you can get to that specialized approach, you're going to win a heck of a lot more often. Absolutely. That subprime customer is a heck of a lot easier than the customer who, a 720, I can go anywhere. Right? I got 10 grand to put down. I got 5 grand to put down for your highline. That takes more skill. The subprime's a little bit easier. Right? Question? Yes, sir.
So most smaller stores typically don't have BDCs. And so I'm kind of at that crossroads. Do I hire somebody dedicated to their own companies out there that are outsourced BDCs?
Sure.
So I want to ask you, what's your thought on outsourcing the whole BDC equation?
So we support outsourcing. We have an outsourced model where we don't handle the fresh inbound calls, but we'll make the proactive outreach calls for stores. I think that's a good first step in a lot of cases, right? You're going to want to hold the company accountable. Like the performance numbers that I was sharing with you, right? And I can share even more, but you're going to want to make sure that they're doing a good job. A lot of outsourcing companies will charge by the contact, right? So you give me 100, I'm going to try to get a hold of 100, and I'm going to charge you $3 per contact. So you want to make sure that the performance is there, not just the contact. Performance for me is they actually showed up, right? You know, with a good business development initiative or a good BDC functioning, you should see a 20 to 25% increase in floor traffic because we're generating appointments that are actually showing up. Now, where do you start? One person only focused on outbound calls is a good place to start. If I were to go back into retail tomorrow, I would have somebody and I would solely focus on my 90-day rolling average of unsold traffic. That's all I would focus in on because a huge percentage of those customers are still in the market for a car. Is that a fair statement? I don't need to spend any more money. I just need to work the stuff that has already reached out to me. So again, I would just start with one person and that's all I would have them do, right? Focus on the outbound. Some charge by the minute. There's 101. Yeah. What should they be charging? I mean, we charge by the lead is how we charge. And then there's a spiff on the appointed traffic. So we're going to charge you anywhere from $2.50 up to $4 if we get them to show up, right? So is it worth $4 to have a qualified lead show up on your drive? You know. That's for you to decide. What I can do is, again, if you give me your email, I can have a price sheet sent over to you. Outsourcing, I started Proactive 17 years ago, okay? I could have started outsourcing 16 years ago. I've never really been a fan of outsourcing. The only reason we do it now is because the market wants it. I've never seen a company, a dealer, outsource their BDC long term. I don't think anybody's going to manage or love your customers better than you or your people. I just don't think that that's something you can outsource. They're just going through they're trying to check a box. Whereas your people should be trying to move and motivate and maintain the relationship, maintain a level of rapport, to help, to serve, not sell. The more you serve and not try to sell, the more people respond or engage. Yes, sir. The CRM is the primary tool for your BDC. So if the CRM, if we're not feeding, junk in, junk out, we've all heard that about technology. So if we're not putting the right data into it, it's going to affect the production capability of your BDC, but it's the primary tool for your BDC. I would agree with you. 27 years ago, as a salesperson, it was my job to be able to handle an inbound sales call effectively. It was my job to have 2 solid confirmed appointments a day. It was my job to have long-term follow-up and follow-through. But the average salesperson doesn't do a good job at that. And so organizations have just faced the reality. Then you also couple it with the amount of turnover that we have. Average dealership has about 65% turnover of their salespeople. So you've got people coming and going, right? And that's why it's more of a management tool. The BDC, it's predominantly a female-driven position, and it's much more stable than the floor with salespeople. No. You wouldn't want your BDC to be the receptionist or a switchboard, because what happens is if I'm answering all of the inbound calls, the dealership phone traffic, it's going to affect my outbound call volume, because my mind says I can't make any outbound phone calls because I've got to be available to answer the inbound calls. That make sense? So normally you would still have a receptionist or the auto attendant, and then the BDC, if you had 1 or 2 people, those inbound calls would be transferred, sales calls would be transferred to that person or people. Yes, sir. Sure. So at what point is really up to you. And I'll have dealers say this all the time. I've got an internet sales team. They don't do great, but they do a better job than what we used to do. And I say, well, great. When do they stop doing a good job? Do they do a good job for the first 3 days? Do they do a good job for the first 7 days? Right? So if they do a good job for the first week, then day 8, it goes to the BDC. Right? We recommend that the BDC, with all appointments that they're generating, that the BDC schedule appointments for the manager on duty, not the salesperson. Unsold traffic. Maybe I didn't buy because I didn't like the salesperson. Can you believe that from happening? Right? So we don't put them back with the salesperson. We put them with the sales manager, and then the sales manager, because the only people that get proprietary in the dealership are salespeople. That's my customer. That's my up. Right? They don't know their name. They just know that they sold them a truck 2 years ago, and they haven't called them in 2 years. So the people I want to get proprietary are sales managers. They're my customers. It's my sandbox. I'm letting you play in my sandbox. So all the appointments are set for the manager on duty. We call it a reverse TO. The manager gets up and does a meet and greet. Okay? Hey, Mr. Customer, I saw you on my appointment log. I appreciate you coming in, especially with the big sale and promotion. What sort of vehicle are you interested in purchasing today? Aren't those all trial closes? Right? How many times has a salesperson landed a customer on the wrong vehicle? All the time. So if a sales manager does the meet and greet, qualifies the customer, are we going to be able to shorten that amount of time that it takes to land them on a car? Right? Most managers don't get involved in a deal until the deal goes south or it's going sideways. Right? Have you ever seen that happen? Customer sees us walking across the showroom, they go, oh boy, here we go, hammer time. Well, if I do the meet and greet, I'm the nice guy that you met. And so we've got all kinds of word tracks, but we say something like, hey, what I'm going to do is put you with one of my top salespeople. After the demonstration drive, I'll sit down with you and give you my very best sales price. That doesn't sound too bad, does it? Setting them up for the demo, setting them up for the write-up, right? So at what point does it go to the BDC? It just depends on how efficient or effective your people are and where do they stop. But then any appointment that the BDC generates, we feel should go back to management, not back to the salesperson. Right? Yes, sir. You got a question?
Yeah, I did. Have you seen any problem with different phone systems we have here? And nothing gets in outer space. You have all everywhere.
Can't find the
Can't find the actual number. They called in. They said they called in, and then we tried to research that number. That happened multiple times.
I'd say a lot of the stores do have the voice over IP and those kinds of things. I haven't heard of that problem. What you may want to do is to check your tracking lines. I was up in Seattle on Monday, right? Dealership had 75 tracking numbers out there. 75. We did an audit, called all 70, I didn't do it, but they called all 75. 19 of them just rang and nobody answered. They don't even know where the numbers were going. 19 out of the 75. So we have to do an audit, do an inventory, figure out where they're going. I had another dealership. The dealer had an 800 number that they had kind of surrendered, right? Gave back. It was still on their website, but it was ringing at another business. So we'd strongly recommend just Google your dealership. Are your hours of operation correct? Is your location correct? Is the phone number accurate? Does the phone number actually ring where you think it's going to ring? These are things that we see happen all the time that aren't done properly. Other questions? Anything over here? Okay, guys. Again, if you'd like a business card, I'd be more than happy to give you my card. Shoot me an email if you've got questions. Whatever we can provide you. Again, be more than happy to give you a staffing matrix, pay plans, job descriptions, all of those types of things, so that as you kind of move through the process, whatever we can do to help you, we'd be more than happy. And again, phone calls are free, right? I got 60 people at our office that'll be more than happy to answer any questions and kind of walk you through the process. Okay? Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.